you've got a broad, I want to get into tech, you've identified the discipline, and then within that discipline you understand what are the most valuable skill sets and what are the most common roles, and then you can look for opportunity that aligns with you upskilling in that area.
Welcome back to the Tech Certified podcast. Our guest today is Yemurai, aka Stembe, a cybersecurity engineer at an investment banking firm and also a content creator online. She has built an incredible following, especially on TikTok and Instagram. I've been following her for a while. We had a great discussion, and in this video, you will learn how to find suitable roles as a beginner in tech, how to navigate imposter syndrome in the tech industry, and you will also hear about Yemurai's incredible journey from graduating with a degree in chemistry to her current position as a cybersecurity professional. But before we begin, I just ask one thing. If you watch this podcast or any videos on the caleboni.certified channel, please subscribe to the channel. Of the people who watch the videos on this channel, 87% of those people are not subscribed to the channel, and only 13% of people that watch are actually subscribed. So if you are watching this content and really enjoy it, please hit that subscribe button. Let's get this total up a little bit higher. I want to see way more than 13% for people who are subscribed and watch. Let's get this number way up. All right, guys, let's get right into the podcast. I think we want to start off this podcast by asking you this question. I mean, I followed you online for a while, and I've seen a lot of the content that you put out there, and you put out a lot about roles that are out there, which is really cool. And you kind of suggest roles that people should sort of get into. And I kind of wanted to ask you on that note, what do you think is the way to find those suitable roles for you and for anyone getting into tech? How do you find those suitable roles? You know, where do you start with that? What are your thoughts on that question?
So that's a really interesting question because technology is so diverse, and I think one of the hardest things about breaking into technology is that there's so much option and like you kind of go over information overload. The practical steps that I would suggest for people who want to break into the industry is that I break tech into 5 disciplines. And so those 5 disciplines are cloud, data, AI, cybersecurity, and web development. That's where I'd start off as like the disciplines within tech. I encourage people to research into those different disciplines and take time whilst researching those different disciplines to get a general understanding about the conversation within those disciplines and also the opportunities and roles within there. What I find with a lot of people, they get confused because they haven't necessarily got a strategy towards their research in tech. They kind of just go online, look for whatever seems to be high paying or what everybody's going for, but they haven't actually dedicated enough time to do research within each of those disciplines. So the 5 disciplines, give yourself time and grace researching into those different disciplines and identify like what's the language, what's the conversation, what's happening in industry, and what are the roles. And so what I like to do as a starter is like Lawagon and General Assembly have introductory lessons across those different disciplines. So you could be like, I want to know more about the cloud. What on earth is the cloud? Go to maybe Lawagon or General Assembly, do one of their 1-hour intro sessions, 2-hour intro sessions, and find out, okay, is this something that's of interest to me? Yes, it is. So once you've done that and you've like, okay, it seems to me that I really like the area of cybersecurity. What I like to do is find out the key roles within that discipline. So let's say in cybersecurity, you've got incident response, you've got project management, business analyst, cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity analyst. Find out what are the most common jobs in that discipline, because then that will tell you like, okay, these are the common jobs within cybersecurity and what are the most in-demand skills within that discipline. So I think you've got a broad, I want to get into tech, you've identified the discipline, and then within that discipline you understand what are the most valuable skill sets and what are the most common roles, and then you can look for opportunity that aligns with you upskilling in that area. So that's sort of the starting ground, I would say. More specifically to the content that I share, I think it's just a gift that I have. Working within industry, you might not necessarily understand how your skill set translates into the industry until you start working. It's only until I started working that I was like, oh my gosh, actually, being in the industry, if we had someone who had business acumen, they'd be really good at this. If we had someone who did that and whatever. But I think when you're starting out, you might not necessarily be able to understand what makes the most sense based on your background. But yeah, that's what I would say. And also on the pursuit of wanting a tech career, understands that your trajectory might change. So for me, when I was pursuing a career within tech, my ambition was to get into cloud. At that time, I knew it was cloud engineering. So I just took on opportunities that upskilled me in the area of cloud engineering. But that skill set opened me up to other doors as well. But anyway, during my time applying for roles in cloud, unfortunately, I wasn't successful. However, I was able to land an opportunity in cybersecurity during that journey of wanting to get into tech. So it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, the skills that you develop, but be open to changes in your career trajectory as and when you develop your skill set.
Amazing. Those are some really good points. And for the one that you started with when you spoke about the 5 different areas, I think that's a really good breakdown, because even when I was getting into cloud, I kind of thought through some of those areas, and I was like, okay, there's cloud, there's cyber, there's data, there's whatever. I was like, I need to actually understand each of these to know which one I'm trying to get into. And so I really relate to that point. And I also just know that there's so many people who are really confused about
really confused.
Okay, I want to get into tech. Like tech is all this. So it is important to do some research into these little things to understand, what actually draws your interest, and knowing that, like you said, your trajectory could change. I can say, like, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's really important, because if you have a guided direction, what happens is, I said the 5 disciplines, there's a lot of intersections in between those disciplines anyway, but I think starting from somewhere with a structured learning path, with an understanding of what skill set you're going to develop, will still open you up to other areas as well. You're not pigeonholed into one area. It's just having that, okay, I want to get into cloud, I want to get into cloud engineering, this is what I need, this is the skill set. During that journey, it can still open doors for other areas within tech as well. It's a bit like medicine. Like, I want to get into medicine. Medicine, you can specialize in gynecology, pediatrician, like, etc. So people need to, when it comes to tech, they need to have like the medicine approach. I want to get into medicine, but I want to specialize in X, Y, Z, which is where I think people lack and kind of get confused and don't really progress or go anywhere.
That makes so much sense. You're actually not pigeonholed into one thing, and that's a fear of some people. And it basically, the different roles in tech offer transferable skills to other roles, which is a really good point. And so to move on from that point, I kind of wanted to ask you about navigating imposter syndrome in the tech industry. I think it's a massive topic that we haven't quite covered on this podcast so far. And so I thought, like, it would be good to talk to you about that. Imposter syndrome, firstly, for those who don't understand what it is, you give a little bit of an explanation of what that actually means, and just how you navigate that in the tech industry.
I think imposter syndrome is something that's faced amongst all working professionals, regardless of where they are in their careers. But what I like to say, imposter syndrome is the feeling of, oh, I shouldn't be here. Oh, they're going to catch me out. I'm a bit of a fraud. It's always feeling as though you're never good enough for what you're doing. The term was actually coined, I don't know the specifics, but it's a term coined by researchers, some scientists, who found it was really prevalent amongst women who were doing incredibly well in their careers. So I like to see imposter syndrome as a feeling rather than it being like a mental health issue. So it's that constant feeling, why am I here? They've got it wrong. They're going to catch me out. And yeah, that's how I was define it, basically.
Amazing. And that makes so much sense. And I can say, like, for myself, there are so many points in my career where I felt like that.
Yeah.
I felt that way. And like you said, anyone can get to the point where they feel that way. I think I felt that way for different reasons through my career, and for some of it, it's been like early on when certain technical terms come up that I'm like literally have no idea where to start and what you're talking about, and other areas it's where I've just been in a space where, of course, there's no one that looks like me in terms of my ethnicity and my race. And I feel like, wow, I'm the only one here I'm the only black person here, basically. And I sort of feel like, am I really supposed to be here? And I get those feelings. And I feel like I'm an imposter. Like I'm not supposed to be in this space. I don't know if you've had those feelings in your career.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think in tech it's perfectly normal to have those feelings, especially when you're starting out. So for me, that feeling was really intensified when I was first starting out my career within cybersecurity, because I'd literally just come from a chemistry background and I was literally thrown into the big wide world of cybersecurity and aspects of that imposter syndrome, like, oh, am I really meant to be here? Because I didn't understand what was going on. And on top of that, it wasn't just the cybersecurity, it was literally navigating the professional working life, navigating working within a large organization, and navigating being a corporate professional having graduated from university. So in the early stages of my tech career, it was really big because of, number one, the lingo in cybersecurity can be really complicated. Number two, I had to navigate the new stage of life that I was entering into, from being a jobless graduate to an experienced working professional who was getting paid and had tasks to do. And then the third thing, again, is sort of being the minority, I guess, within the team. And yeah, so that's where it's mostly been evident. But I've sort of learned how to navigate that a little bit better now. Some things that have really helped me is the change in mindset. So I like to say, like, I've never been, that feeling is because there's growth and there's development, and that's energy that you should channel to learn. If you don't necessarily get the imposter syndrome, it might be that you're a bit too comfortable where you are. So I like to see it as area of growth, area of development. That can be internal factors. External factors that can contribute to imposter syndrome is your environment. So for me, I've been fortunate in my career that I've had psychological safety. So feeling safe enough to make mistakes and fail, and be not disciplined for it, but be open to constructive criticism in a way that's loving and nurturing and allows you for development. So for me, luckily, in the first part of my career, when I did make mistakes, I had psychological safety, which was given to me by my manager, so that, if something did happen or I made a mistake in production, he would be there like, Yem, you fumbled, but what can we do next time to improve? Here's what we need to do next time to improve. Even in my current role as well, I have that psychological safety in terms of, okay, I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? And can you provide me with feedback in terms of what I've done well or where I haven't done well? So I think internally that mindset shift has been helpful in navigating imposter syndrome, but also the external factors like my team and my manager and the work-life balance and the work culture have also helped me navigate imposter syndrome as well.
Wow, amazing. And some really good points there. Psychological safety of, feeling like, okay, you can make mistakes and you're not going to get fired for it. Like, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Because especially as a junior, when you're starting out,
Hmm.
how, like, we've had about 15 guests on this podcast,
Yeah.
and pretty much all of them have told a story about a mistake they made in
Yeah.
their career. Some of them have 10 years experience, some of them have 2-3 years experience,
Hmm.
but they've all shared a story about, well, most of them have shared a story about something that went completely wrong. Some of them have
Mm.
shut down their whole
Yep.
organization. Some
Hmm.
of them have deleted emails that are supposed to go to the CEO. I've had stories that I've told about big mistakes that I've made.
Hmm.
And I think the important part of those stories is that the response has always been, it's always been a learning experience rather
Yeah.
than a you're in big trouble
Yeah. Yeah.
type of thing.
Hmm.
Which is a really good point that you made. We've just launched a free cloud engineer assessment to evaluate and assess your current skills on your path to becoming a cloud professional. Now, when you take this assessment, it provides some incredible recommendations for your path. And remember, this is completely free. It costs you nothing. It only helps you on your journey. So if this interests you and you are an aspiring cloud professional, definitely take this assessment. I'm going to leave a link to it. Here's an example of me taking it myself and getting some pretty good recommendations from my own assessment. So guys, check this out, and I hope this is really helpful. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. And so you spoke a little bit about your story,
Yes.
and your journey to where you are now. I mean, you spoke about how you started, or you did your degree in chemistry
Hmm.
and moved from there into the industry, or
Mm.
how you've worked in different roles and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to understand more about that and
Hmm.
get a brief walkthrough of your journey from where you started to where you currently are.
Oh boy. Yeah, so I studied chemistry, and the initial intention was to be a doctor, typical African parent
Wow.
style. But then I realized at the end of my degree I did not want to do postgraduate medicine, and I did not want to work in a lab or do anything related to chemistry. So at the end of my degree, I decided to take a year out and go to China, because if I stayed at home and told my parents I was jobless, unemployed, and wanted to figure my life out, they'd kill me. And it was also an opportunity for me to gain career clarity as to what did I actually want to pursue in the future career-wise, which is actually a question we don't really get time and capacity to think about as graduates or, university students. So I thought, let me take some time out, go to China and extend my studies and figure out what I actually wanted to do. So in the final year of my degree, in the final semester of the year in China studies, COVID happened, and we were forced to come back to the UK. And basically, we had to look at how you can use technology to teach education. So that introduced me into the world of technology, because I thought, oh my gosh, we're, now having to work remotely. My year in China studies had been terminated, but doing research into how technology, the edutech space is evolving, was what kind of got me interested in the field. That also coincided with a tweet that went viral by a lady called Yasmin, who tweeted how much she earned within technology, but also her success within the industry and her career progression. And I remember it was a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, there's a black woman who's earning a high paying salary within technology, and I'm just learning about it. So there's opportunity there. So following on from that, I decided to take on a course looking at cloud computing. And following on from that course, I was able to work at a health tech startup, which was at the intersection of chemistry and technology. So essentially, we were looking at how you can use technology to detect for coronavirus. And so that actually required you to have scientific knowledge, which I had from my chemistry degree, but also an understanding of technology in terms of how do you interpret those results using technology, etc. So for me, I really saw the versatility of technology from the educational perspective, but also from the chemistry perspective. So following on from that, as with startups, they don't necessarily work out. I was sort of in a limbo, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I attended a recruitment event hosted by a career support group. They had a partnership with an organization within finance, and as part of that recruitment event, the hiring managers were just talking about the opportunities and the roles they had to offer. And I, at the time, I didn't want to get into cybersecurity because I thought I'm not smart enough, I'm not intelligent enough, there's no opportunity for me. The only reason why I applied for the role at the time is because I liked my manager, and I thought, okay, I have the transferable skills from the cloud computing knowledge that I've developed because that financial institution was moving over to the cloud. And also, my manager seems like a really cool guy. He seems like someone that I could work for. So then I was like, oh, well, okay, let me apply and see what happens. And so from then on, the rest is history. So I was able to land the role within cyber. It was a shock. It was those 3 years at that institution were a shock, because I was literally, it was almost like I was doing a degree, in like a foreign language, but that was the training ground for me to have the career I have now in a more senior position within investment banking. So it's been a difficult, exciting journey the first 3 years in the junior role, but very much worthwhile.
Wow, no, an amazing story, and there's a lot that stands out about that story. And I think the most incredible thing about your story is, well, from my perspective, is that, like you said before, you're not pigeonholed in the tech industry. Even from the start, it's one of the industries that you can come from any background and get into within a short space of time if you're willing to do the learning, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to do the courses and the long stuff. You can actually make your way into this industry of tech, whether it's cyber, whether it's cloud, whether it's software, whether it's all the other areas of tech, which is really cool. And another thing, I always love when people talk about this story and they tell people how difficult it actually was.
Yes.
Because people can really see the numbers and the salary online and be like,
yes,
yeah, I want to do that. It wasn't easy. Like we didn't just wake up and get into this. It was a journey. And for those that are on this journey, which is a lot of the people who watch this podcast, it's helpful to understand your journey, Yemurai, and how your journey went and how you got to the position that you're at, which is really cool. And to move on, just on that point, I've been following you, and I see like you've done so many like amazing talks and speaking gigs, and you've been doing a lot of public speaking and sharing a lot of the knowledge that you've learned on this journey, which is so amazing. Like I was at what's the Black Tech Day, but I wasn't there the same day you were there. And I've just been like seeing your posts about all the other sort of events that you speak at and that sort of thing, which is really, really cool. So I wanted to ask you about that, literally, like how you got into speaking and how you found speaking at events and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so for me, I've always been a bit of a yapper, and it's just something that I'm good at, I guess. But I felt like at work, I was recognized a lot by my peers who'd say, oh, like you're really good at talking, you're really good at articulating yourself, etc. And it's something that I really enjoy, and I also used to read at church. So I only came across speaking as a profession last year because there was a lady called Hayley Melenda who was talking about her success within the speaking world and how much she was getting paid. And I said, wait a minute, I yap for free. There's something that I need let's make it a profession. Let's be seen as a professional within the industry. So I actually started taking professional lessons and speaking and really understanding the industry, because it is actually an industry, which a lot of people don't realize. And I actually invested in Byron and Bianca's self-made speaking academy, where they taught us the foundations of speaking. Like it's a whole world, keynote topics, video show reels, professional headshots. Like there's a lot that goes into being recognized as a professional speaker. So having that sort of training, I would say, gave me the background, I'd say, and the foundation essentially to really pivot into the speaking world and do a lot more engagement. So a lot of I've started to treat my social media page as though it's a public speaking platform. And that's sort of how people can recognize, okay, how does this person speak? How do they command the stage? What's their appearance like? And that's how people can come across your type of content and want you to speak at their events. I've also spoken at conferences as well. A lot of the time, organizations have what you call for papers, which is basically where you submit a keynote topic or a panel discussion that you would like to speak about, and then they can give you a place there. And then, of course, me just having increased visibility, people being able to see my YouTube, my TikTok, my LinkedIn posts. That's sort of how the opportunities have been coming in. So it's only last year that I was like, oh, people get paid for this? Sometimes 5 figures. I'm like, let me actually invest in my personal development in public speaking.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's really good to know. And I feel like, yeah, it's a skill, and it's not easy. Like, not everyone can just like go up on a stage and talk to whatsoever amount of people. But it's really interesting to know that as well, on top of your natural ability to speak, like you said, you also went out and did that training to sharpen that skill and learn how to do that in that professional setting, and get all the engagements that you've gotten, which is really cool and really incredible and so insightful to speak about and hear from you on this podcast.
Thank you.
And so I want to get into my favorite topic on this podcast, and I always love asking people this question because I think it's so interesting, and we've been able to hear so many interesting stories through this one question. And so the question is, what is your most interesting career story? And it could be like interesting in a good way, like, oh, something amazing happened, I did really well in this. Or it could be interesting in a bad way, something terrible happened, something blew up, there was an explosion, or whatever the case may be. And the choice is yours of which one you want to choose. What is your most interesting career story that you'd want to share with the audience today?
I'm going to share 2. One's non-technical and the one's technical. So non-technical, one interesting career that I had, part-time job I would say, is I used to be a food taster. So I actually used to get paid, it was like 20 quid an hour, but 20 quid an hour to taste supermarket food before it went out on the shelves. So you'd be like, is it too spicy? Is it too chili? Is it too this? So that's one of my side gigs that I've really enjoyed doing. From a technical perspective, gosh, I feel like I don't think I have a story. I think I see all of these things as experiences. What's been the worst? I think, to be honest, I think there's nothing that stands out in particular, but I have had cases where, in my previous role, where, you make a change. So in the tech world of things, you have changes and stuff. So before you deploy anything out for the public use, you need to trial and test it beforehand. So I've had multiple cases where, not multiple, let me not say multiple, one or two cases where something that has gone well in testing environment. So let's say we're looking to update a website, for example, has done well in testing, but then in the production environment, it doesn't work. And what can be attributed to that can be things like making sure you really check your work, but also get someone else to peer review your work. But sometimes it can be, this is why in networking is so important in cybersecurity, because the production environments and the testing environments can sometimes be configured differently. So for me, I've had incidences where you've deployed something into production and it doesn't necessarily work in the expected way because for some odd reason the production environment doesn't necessarily simulate the test environment. But I've been fortunate enough in my career where I haven't caused outage on a large scale that I can remember, because if I did, I would have hidden and disappeared. But it's usually like a smallish website that doesn't have impact, or if we identify the issue, I'm able to quickly revert back to the previous one. Yeah. So I would say my whole journey has been like an experience. Like the fact that I'm even here talking about cybersecurity is like a massive thing for me, because it just goes to show how much has changed, how much has developed, and how much I've grown, I guess.
Yes, amazing. Thanks so much for that, Yemurai. I really appreciate you sharing that, and I think that is just like a look at the day to day of really working in this space. Going from test to production, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and everything is a learning process. And once you do it enough times, you know, or you get better at knowing and predicting what was going to happen.
And to be honest, you need to make mistakes to do well in tech. I think the more impactful it is, I'm not saying that it should be impactful, the more you will never forget that. And also the people around you will be like, yeah, because sometimes these issues can cost the company millions of pounds. So I'm not saying you should do it, but those ones you'll never forget.
Yeah, for real. Yemurai, thanks so much for being a part of this podcast episode. It's so great to have guests like you really share their experiences and their knowledge with our audience. And there's so many people in the audience that are either preparing to get onto the path that you're on, or that are already on it and are trying to push forward their career. And so it is amazing to have guests like you that are in this space and are able to share exactly what their experiences and their experiences are working in this space. So thank you so much for being on this podcast. And to end off, I just wanted to ask you if there's anything you wanted to share, plug, or shout out. Go ahead and do that.
Make sure you follow me on TikTok, STEM_babe. Follow me on Instagram, STEM_babe_, and sign up to my mailing list, because I literally share opportunities, but not all opportunities on my social media pages. On my mailing list, you will get all of the opportunities that I come across. I will share them, and sometimes they're exclusive to those who are signed up to my mailing list. So make sure you're signed up to follow me on social media, but also, most importantly, follow me on my mailing list.
Amazing. And the mailing list and Yemurai's other socials will be linked in the description of this video. Thanks so much, guys, for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Tech Sci-Fi podcast.